So we recently got our second look at Dragon Ball Super Beerus, and other than mostly showing us more reanimated or recomposited scenes from the original Dragon Ball Super anime, which isn't really that exciting. I thought the trailer was actually pretty underwhelming. Thought maybe we'd see more Resurrection F or even a sneak peek of the Universe 6 tournament. This project and its trailers have left me a little bit confused and maybe even a touch concerned, because I'm kind of losing what's the point. But let me not look a gift horse in the mouth. Let me talk about the positives first here. Okay, Dragon Ball Super is objectively a mess of a series. In both the anime and the manga, I know the manga diehards are gonna come at my throat for saying this, but the manga and anime being separate continuities and being released at the same time the way they were really hurt the foundation of this series, because it made them so radically different that it's really hard to follow. Of course, the manga also has the issue of skipping or skimming or piecemealing arcs to you. Like, the manga skips Resurrection F entirely, it zooms past Battle of Gods in a few very short chapters, and then of course you have DBS Broly, which is like piecemealed to you as flashbacks here and there, and it's a little bit more, you get a little bit, and it's just not a cohesive story. You could pick up the Dragon Ball manga, the original manga, which I have over there, which includes everything from Goku meeting Bulma to the defeat of Buu and End of Z. And you could just read it straight through. You don't need anything additional. But to read the Dragon Ball Super manga, you kinda need to go watch Resurrection F in some capacity and kinda hope that it roughly fits into what the manga is trying to do. You have to go look at Battle of Gods maybe and recontextualize these zoomed past scenes so that way you can fully understand what's going on, and especially Toriyama's vision of it. Trust me, we'll get to that in this video. And of course, Dragon Ball Super Broly, you'd have to go watch an entire movie that is clearly different than the intention that the manga has based off the manga's flashback scenes. And you'd have to just sort of understand that there are differences in the concepts here. But that making the manga a mess, alongside the anime literally melting and then ending at the Tournament of Power with its weird Toei filler arcs and bad pacing, as well as terrible drawings and animation and terrible compositing where the lines are just straight one-point lines and the colors are disgusting, that you have just a mess of a series that's not really a fun way to consume any piece of media in either fashion. You don't get to be a manga purist or an anime purist. You have to be some weird hybrid to get everything, and Toei is rightfully trying to correct that in some capacity. But is it enough? Is what they're doing the right way to have gone about this? In the minds of most fans, Dragon Ball Super Beerus has two main jobs. The first is a visual upgrade. Now, using the original Dragon Ball Super anime as a backbone, so that way they can draw upon it and use scenes that are already well-drawn or well-animated, maybe touch them up, change the compositing and the colors and the backgrounds to make it more seamless with what this modern series is going for, while also being able to add stuff, is a smart way to go about it. It lets them have the resources to do something like the Moro arc, which we already know is in pre-production, and everyone seemingly has moved over to that, which, again, I'll talk about in a bit. This obviously allows the show to visually improve, which is a massive complaint about watching Dragon Ball Super back, because you realize just how melted that show was. Now, the next thing it has to do kind of conflicts with the first thing, because the first thing is about enhancing visuals that already existed while adding as little as possible, and the second thing is to make it more manga accurate. But how can you make it more manga accurate without reanimating and redoing entire scenes and sections of the story? It feels like the Dragon Ball Super manga's deviations might be just too big to ignore. So when we do eventually get to the Universe 6 tournament, do we expect to see Goku using Super Saiyan God against Hit? Or is it going to still be Blue Kaioken that wins the day? I don't know if the series really has the chance to change that much. And if it doesn't, it does make you start to ask, what was the real point? Because this is only truly worth it if it is lining us up as best as possible to get into the Moro arc without having any weird anime disconnections, which mostly happen in the Tournament of Power, I would say, for especially what comes in the Moro arc. No spoilers from here. Going back to the visuals for a second, I think it's clear from the trailers that this is a true visual improvement. There have been plenty of people who've posted on like Twitter, Reddit, whatever, about the shot-to-shot comparisons from the original anime to this new version, and you could just see overall it is a vast improvement. And honestly, it's going to make it a more pleasant experience to watch, and if it's the ideal and #1 way to experience the story of Battle of Gods, hey, I'm happy with that. If it's the best way to experience Resurrection F, I'm happy with that. So I'm not asking for it to change anything crazy, but adding some manga content here and there would be useful, especially since you advertised it to be that way. So I think advertising that you're gonna have manga content and then not using the manga content potentially might be a bit, well, screwed up. I will say though, with the visuals, I don't know if it's just me and maybe I'm just so used to the way Dragon Ball Super used to look, but the visuals do feel a little deep fried. Someone said that on Twitter. I'm sorry if you see this, shout out to you. You could post it in the comments. But someone on Twitter called Dragon Ball Super Beerus just Dragon Ball Super deep fried, and I cannot get that out of my head because some of the shots really do look deep fried. It does look better, do not get me wrong, but like some of the compositing and the extra effects that don't really seem necessary, but like added for the sake of adding something, I'm a little confused by some of the choices. Now, there are great shots from a storyboard perspective. I think of like all those sinister Beerus shots as great and stuff, but like just talking purely on the compositing and maybe even the color work in some scenes, it does seem a little deep fried. That's a bit of a concern I have if it lingers on into the Moro arc. I'd rather it not be too deep fried, but you know, maybe they're making it more punchy to really sell the contrast from what came before in Dragon Ball Super, which was a bit dull, to be honest. Oh, hold on one second. You're not sleeping well. You're having back pain? Thankfully, Plank Mattress is the sponsor of today's video. Plank is a mattress that comes rolled up in a box and is shipped directly to you with free shipping throughout the entire United States. This mattress is different though because it's actually the firmest mattress on the market. With Plank Mattress's flippable design, you get two sides, firm and ultra firm, so you can dial in your level of comfort without sacrificing back support. Plank mattresses have even been endorsed by the American Chiropractic Association for its reduction of spinal stress, better lumbar support, and how they help to alleviate back pain. Their mattresses are also designed, assembled, and shipped from their factory in Arizona, which cuts out the middleman to keep the price down while still being able to use premium materials. Now, I did set up the phone call bit as the intro to this video, but it was a real scenario. My friends Vandy and Linz are moving in together soon, but Vandy's old mattress was just not going to cut it. So Plank hooked them up with a king-size Plank Firm Luxe mattress. That way they could both sleep on it comfortably without the back pain that comes from those way too soft mattresses. Once we got it unboxed and on the bed frame, I had to give it a try, and I have to say, the cooling cover felt like heaven, and the firmness instantly made my back feel at ease. I'm not gonna lie, I kinda wish I kept it for myself, but they needed it more than me. I'll have to get the next one. Now, I only laid on this mattress for a bit, so let's hear from the person who actually has been sleeping on it. So Vandy, how you been enjoying the mattress?
Dude, I love it. It's so nice. It's really weird to sleep with it, like with one person, considering it's a king, but I do love it. It's so unbelievably comfortable. I have like chronic back issues as well, but it's already been helping, and I've had it for about a week now. So it's really, really, really nice, and I love being able to like spread apart and just absolutely enjoy every night of sleep. I love it, man. I really do.
So click the link below, scan the QR code, or just go to plankmattress.com/Carthu and make sure to use code Carthu to get 30% off your mattress. Thank you, Plank, for sponsoring this video and for giving my friends a good night's sleep. Okay, but now we have the big conversation, the manga content. Let's talk about this a bit more deeply. Let's look at these trailers that we've seen and see if anything is weird here. The first thing is that in the Dragon Ball Super anime originally and the Dragon Ball Super manga, we don't see Beerus waking up. But we see in the trailers that we will see the scene where Beerus wakes up. But notably, and keep this in mind, that scene of Beerus waking up was in the movie version of Battle of Gods, Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, the original. So it could be that they're trying to be more in line with the movie rather than the manga, which does make sense, and again, we'll talk about it after I go over a few more scenes. The next scene that's weirdly been confirmed to be in this adaptation is the rock, paper, scissors scene, where Oolong and Beerus play rock, paper, scissors to decide the fate of the Earth. It's pretty interesting that this is included, but also not if you think about it. Obviously, this didn't happen in the Dragon Ball Super manga version, which again is a very expedited version of the story. but it does happen in the movie version of Battle of Gods. So why not have it be in this version as well? It does seem like movie accuracy over manga accuracy is what they're going for. Something that wasn't in the movie, though, is the healing factor from Super Saiyan God. This was in episode 11, I believe, of the Dragon Ball Super anime, and it's when Goku gets pierced through his torso, falls into the ocean, everyone thinks he's gonna die, and Super Saiyan God sort of heals his wound, and he comes back up. This scene does seem like it'll still happen in Dragon Ball Super Beerus. Like, we're not 100% sure, obviously, but Goku does have the hole in his gi where the wound happened. So if they left that in by accident, that'd be pretty crazy, considering these seem to be finalized shots that they're putting in the trailer. But I'm assuming that it's intentional and that they left that beat of the fight in because they like it. But that is actually not from the movie, and it's not from the manga either. It's just an anime-only scene, and it gives Super Saiyan God, specifically what I call Ritual Super Saiyan God, which I think is different than just activating normal Super Saiyan God, but that's my own personal belief. It seems to give Ritual Super Saiyan God a unique power set, even more so than it already has over the regular Super Saiyan God we come to know, which does not seem to have a similar healing factor in play. And now this is the big one, because for a lot of the Dragon Ball Super manga readers, they often point to this as being a big difference in specifically the power scaling of the manga version of Dragon Ball Super. And that's that the manga version of Dragon Ball Super does not show or have a scene of Goku absorbing the power of Super Saiyan God into his base form. This is something that was prevalent in the Dragon Ball Super anime and was huge for power scaling, because obviously if Goku absorbed the power of Super Saiyan God into his base form, but then could go Super Saiyan God on top of it, well, that's a really strong guy. And it made the whole Beerus, how much power he was using arguments feel even more weird. This was also an issue in the movie, because in the movie, we have the same scene of Goku absorbing Super Saiyan God into himself and using that power without actually being in Super Saiyan God. This became an issue more so because in the movie version, Beerus does not say he was lying about how much his power output was against Goku, which makes it kind of weird that in the next movie that follows it, you have Goku using Super Saiyan Blue, which is a Super Saiyan God turning Super Saiyan, so like 50 times stronger. Maybe he's 50 times stronger. Well, that should be enough to close the gap with Beerus, and more so than close it, completely surpass it. But that doesn't seem to be the case in that movie as well. This was actually rectified in the Dragon Ball Super anime, where Beerus basically says at the end of the arc, yeah, I was lying. I'm not telling them how much power I'm actually using. I wanted to be like a motivator or whatever. And that becomes more clear when you see in the training that Beerus did want Whis to keep an eye on them, so on and so forth. And it seems like that fix was enough, since they're keeping Goku absorbing God into his base form in this version of the story as well. Something I forgot to mention in my recording is that the Super Saiyan God ritual in Dragon Ball Super Beerus does look a bit more like the manga version of the Super Saiyan God ritual. There are some minor differences, like the character positioning and the circle, but overall Goku flying into the air, turning into Super Saiyan God, having that red smoke that clears off him, all is in line with what the manga showed as that version of the ritual. So 1 point towards manga accuracy, I guess. But what all of these scenes show me, except for the healing factor that is that this is not going for manga accuracy. They don't want to use the expedited Toyotaro version of the manga. You see, at the time that the Dragon Ball Super manga was covering Battle of Gods, the Dragon Ball Super manga was nothing more than a promotional vehicle for the anime. There was no belief that the manga would go on to become its own separate continuity and entity that stood on its own. At this point, the chapters were still monthly, but they were incredibly short for monthly chapters. Battle of Gods is over in a few chapters, when realistically it needed to be a few chapters with the modern 40 to 50 page counts, not, I think it had 20 pages maybe, and that's generous. I did not double check before making this video, so I'll put it on screen, or maybe I'll dub over this scene. Those chapters were short, expedited, and advertisements basically for an anime through a video game magazine. They're not in Weekly Shonen Jump. So these manga chapters at this point were not a vision for Dragon Ball Super and specifically Battle of Gods. The easiest way to get that vision, to get an understanding of what specifically, I'm sure that everybody's looking for this, Toriyama wanted from Battle of Gods, is actually to look back to the movie that Toei sought out Toriyama directly to help with, and he basically reshaped that movie from the ground up in a lot of ways. Obviously, some of the plot points from Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods were still the Toei original ideas that Toriyama didn't feel the need to correct, but Toriyama did change a lot. So going back to the movie as a reference point, and possibly even Toei's own internal material of what they know Toriyama wanted that movie to have, could potentially be why this arc in particular is not seeming to pan out the way the manga's version did. And honestly, I do think that is generally speaking for the better. The only interesting thing about this trailer is that they show Frieza being revived, which I think anyone with a brain knew was happening if you read the website where it kept calling this an enhanced version of Dragon Ball Super, not an enhanced version of Battle of Gods specifically, but everyone got confused by the name Dragon Ball Super Beerus, which I kind of understand, and the first trailer only showing Battle of Gods to think it was only a Battle of Gods remake. But no, this was always intended to be a Dragon Ball Super enhanced version. Though it is quickly becoming clear, it's less than a lot of us thought it would be. Because as we just found out from a couple of people who reported this on Twitter, people who have verified connections to Toei Animation and some animators on current projects at Toei, they're not going past the Universe 6 tournament for now. The Future Trunks arc and the Tournament Power are just not happening, at least for now. I've seen a lot of doom and gloom over this. A lot of people wanted a reimagined and changed version of the Future Trunks arc, where maybe Rage Trunks doesn't happen. Changed ending to the Future Trunks arc, though it would never change that much because the manga's ending basically wraps up the same way. There's just slight deviations in the path leading to there. And, you know, the different Tournament Power, where the fodder characters are treated like fodder characters, so that way we get to the meat of things a bit quicker. I'm not a big fan of either the anime or manga's Tournament Power. I think they both have their strengths and weaknesses. I think a combined version actually might be ideal. But regardless, we might not be seeing those anytime soon. And now, again, some people are saying, we're never gonna see them. Oh no, it's over. They canceled Dragon Ball Super Beerus. I wouldn't take it that far. I may have titled or thumbnailed this video with like canceled ? Because I do want to address this. Dragon Ball Super Beerus is not being canceled. We can actually look to One Piece and how One Piece, during periods where they don't want to overtake the manga and they don't want to have to make a filler arc, they'll go back to older arcs and do like an enhanced version of them. Toei did this with the Fishman Island arc in One Piece not too long ago. It's actually very similar to what they're doing to Dragon Ball Super Beerus, but honestly, they actually did a bit less than what they're doing in Dragon Ball Super Beerus. And so what I think could happen is we go up to the Universe 6 tournament, we get the Moro arc, maybe the first half, maybe the whole thing, and then there's a break before Granola, and in that break, to allow the animators more time to prepare and re-up before another major arc happens, especially one like Granola, where there's a lot of fighting basically the whole way through. I think it could be a good time to take that period of time, a small team, just like he did for Dragon Ball Super Beerus right now, and finish off the rest of Dragon Ball Super Beerus. It might even change names, who knows, maybe Dragon Ball Super Beerus, the final chapters, I don't know. But have that small team come back, have them wrap up this enhanced version of Dragon Ball Super the way it was meant to be, and hopefully do it in a way that, you know, brings a little bit of that manga accuracy in, that brings a bit more of, hopefully, Toriyama's intentions in. And I know some people will think this is sacrilege, but even let Toyotaro come in. Have him say, hey, this is the story I was working directly with Toriyama on. We know Toriyama directly supervised the Dragon Ball Super manga, and say that this is the direction we were going with things. I think he'd probably be relatively trustworthy there. He seems to be a fan first and foremost, and because of that, I think he would relay what Toriyama wanted more so than his own maybe personal opinions on what should and shouldn't happen in the series. But hey, if he really was the one that led the Moro arc story the way it was, and he was the creative lead on that story arc, guys, when you see it animated, you're going to be like, maybe we should let Toyotaro do a bit more writing. But, you know, I understand the skepticism, especially without Toriyama to look over his shoulder and, you know, correct things when needed, I'm sure. But overall, I am excited for Dragon Ball Super Beerus. I think some things are being presented a bit weird. I'm a little skeptical about how much manga content is actually going to be in this, especially if we're only going to the Universe 6 tournament. But hopefully they prove me wrong when we get there, because Resurrection F will have nothing to compare to. Battle of Gods is already showing itself to be more of a reimagined, more accurate to the movie version Battle of Gods. So the Universe 6 tournament is the only place they could add that manga content that they said was being added in the press releases. And we'll just have to leave it up to them to actually make that happen. But let me know what you think about Dragon Ball Super Beerus and whether you're concerned or hyped for it. I'd love to read it in the comments below. And that's all I have to say. Have a good one.